I propose to you that your heir need not be a boy. In this phallocentric society of ours...
I don't know what phallocentric means, but no girls!
It probably doesn't come as a surprise to learn that I adore Crusader Kings 2. So when I say that Crusader Kings 3 takes almost everything that I enjoyed about that game and refines it into an all-round better and more unified experience, it really means something. Now if you've never played Crusader Kings before, I'll give you a brief rundown of the game's core concept. You play as a member of a royal dynasty, living anywhere from Iceland to India in the Middle Ages. Ranking from the lowest count to the most powerful empress, you have to decide how you'll run your land, as well as if or how you'll get more. Now while you plot and scheme, you have to watch out for hundreds of other characters who all have their own goals and motivations, which often includes them wanting your land. And then when you die, you take over as your heir, and if you don't have an heir belonging to your dynasty, it's game over. Having too many heirs just leads to civil wars and splitting your hard-earned land between characters you won't control. Though equally, if you only have one heir, you're always just one unlucky hunting accident away from game over, so you always have to have backup plans. So in this video I'm going to cover the core mechanics of the game as well as noting a bit how they compare to CK2. But I felt the best way to go through all these mechanics and show you why they work so well is to tell you a series of stories of my time playing Crusader Kings 3. Before these stories though, I felt I should talk about the presentation of the game, because I think Paradox really nailed it on this release. Now, if you've ever played or watched videos of CK2, you'll probably know it isn't exactly a beautiful game, but its graphics serve what the game was trying to be very well. Loading up the map for the first time in CK3 was incredible. Everything about it is cleaner and overall it's far nicer, which is important in a game where you stare at a map for hours on end. The map style changes as you zoom in and out as well, which I love, and there's still some of the alt versions to click through like culture or religion as well as others. And while the map is great, the biggest step up is the fact that all the characters are now fully 3D modelled. Like in Crusader Kings 2 you had 3D models, but they're always presented in a portrait style that made them seem as if they were 2D really. This is still somewhat the case here, but during in-game events it's pretty common to have the 3D models emoting what's meant to be going on. So while this game still has the excellent writing that the series is known for, being actually able to see your vassals glancing around as they discuss rumours in the palace gardens makes them as characters far more lifelike, and this results in far better immersion. The final 2 points I want to talk about on presentation are the loading screens and the music. Both of these were amazing in CK2, but you can just see that they had more money to work with in this release, meaning that the loading screen art is just more detailed than it was in CK2. And like, okay, that's a tiny detail, right? But it's something you see every time you load into your save, and it helps get you into the mindset of the world you're about to enter. The music has the same effect as well. Like a lot of these tracks are excellent ambient background music as you'll hear throughout this video, but some of these songs are just perfect for getting you in the mood to play the game, such as the one that always plays on launch. The way it's orchestrated and mixed just makes it hit, while also feeling authentic to the game's world. I could keep going about how these little improvements, such as how the UI just flows that little bit better, make the whole game feel smoother, but these are the kind of things that you almost need to feel as you play the game yourself, and you'll probably be able to pick up on a lot of them just as you watch the rest of the video. So I guess it's time to finally move on to those stories I promised to tell you about. The first story is actually from my very first time playing the game. Since I had around 200 hours in CK2, I decided to skip the tutorial and go straight into playing. Now, Ireland is a natural choice for any first playthrough because you're usually dealing with a lot less moving parts early on. Smaller armies, fewer vassals, that kind of thing. So because of this, I decided to play as the Count of Jasmine in the earliest start date, 867. Starting things off and getting used to the new UI, the game recommended I try raiding my neighbours. And this went pretty well to start things off, making me money on top of my local taxes. That was until I got a pop-up. It was a Viking announcing he wanted all my land. And while Paradox has spent years taking my money, I felt enough Irish people had suffered from the Norse menace and tried to fight them off. But when 2,000 angry Norsemen showed up off the coast of my only province, they very quickly killed my 300 men and deposed me, ending my first run. Not to be put off, I decided to load in as the same ruler again. This time, with the knowledge that I was going to face a Viking invasion, I focused on preparing myself for their attack. And sure enough, it came. Only this time, it was an Icelandic count with a much bigger army, destroying me even faster this time. Now, Vikings destroying Irish counts in the 800s is actually painfully historically accurate, so I decided to move to the 1066 start date and to one of the game's recommended rulers, who happened to be the ruler of Moon in that time period. Things went much better here, mainly because there weren't Vikings constantly wanting to kick my head in. Early on, I secured an alliance through marriage with Duke William the Bastard of Normandy, who, after a small war, renamed himself to William the Conqueror. Having such a powerful ally on my side actually meant I was able to start picking fights with all my neighbouring rulers, and after 30 years I was able to take over half of Ireland before I declared myself High King of Ireland, fulfilling my life's goal, though almost as soon as I was king I started looking to Scotland as my next target. There was one issue, however. I was a member of an insular Catholic religion that wasn't listening to the Vatican. Essentially, we were pagans who prayed to Jesus, so because of this, my religion not only allowed me to have multiple wives, but actually encouraged it. So with my many wives, I ended up having far too many children, so many that no amount of illnesses or accidents could slow them down. Couple this with the fact that my culture had yet to develop enough to allow singular heirs. When I died, all my kids took different cuts of my land. This even meant that my prized capital that I'd spent years developing didn't go to my heir, and instead of getting all its wealth and troops, I got the Burren of Connacht. Filled with bitterness, I tried to assassinate or imprison all my brothers, only to have them start a civil war. Now, as I said, they had more troops than me, so there wasn't much hope of winning, until a pop-up appeared. Sensing my weakness, Vikings appeared for the first time in this entire run, and even though I tried to convince my siblings that a tactical white peace would probably be in all our best interests, they instead continued fighting, deposed me, and then were overrun by the Vikings themselves. Taking all these lessons of the new systems, I decided to go back to the earliest start date and pick a new ruler. This time I went with Arpad, the leader of the Magyar Confederation of Tribes. This is a really interesting start because the Federation of Tribes are tired of the raids they've been facing in Odessa and can decide to move to the Carpathian Basin to live a better life. Now, if you've ever looked at some Hungarian folklore, it says that Arpad simply asked the local ruler if he could have some grass and water in exchange for the gift of a white horse. And when the ruler agreed, the Hungarians were suddenly like, by grass and water we meant all the land and rivers, and by gift of horse we meant that's your payment. And you have 30 minutes to get off our land. For me, these events were a little bit more like 6,000 angry Hungarians pouring into the Carpathian Basin, looting all the local settlements and then seizing them for themselves, while Arpad laughed and declared himself the Grand Prince of Hungary. But we aren't actually here to talk about Arpad. We're here for his great-grandson, Levente, who inherited the throne at the age of 14. Over all those generations, the Arpad dynasty had grown in power until they were one of the biggest presences in Eastern Europe. But for Levente, all he saw was disorganized tribes praying to vague pagan gods, animals, and ancestors. He wanted to reform this society. Now, all of his ancestors were religious and went on a pilgrimage each, but otherwise were too busy fighting wars or dealing with the nation to do much else. Levente instead devoted his life to studying medicine and religion, going on 4 pilgrimages over his life. He became recognized as one of the great prophets by all the people of his nation, and through his healthy living he actually managed to live well past his 50s, unlike most other characters. And then, after 50 years of ruling, he called a conference of all the Taltos shamans to discuss reforming the religion. Levente had 4 humble requests: equal rights for women, acceptance of gay people, to embrace ritualistic cannibalism, and to allow incest. I expect that all his Christian neighbours would dislike having cannibals next door, or that trying to have a family tree mimic that of Charles II of Spain might come back and bite him. But it was actually giving equal rights to women that collapsed this dynasty. You see, Levente's primary heir changed from his eldest son to his eldest child, who happened to be a daughter that he married off to a German prince for an alliance more than 40 years ago. At this point, Levente was 68 and near death, and his daughter was far too old to have any more children that actually belonged to the Arpad dynasty herself, meaning the only 2 options were to kill his eldest 2 children or change the laws. Sadly, Levente was running on borrowed time, and a hearty diet of human flesh actually didn't help things much, meaning equality was what destroyed the mighty Arpad dynasty. The only silver lining is that he lived long enough to see the daughter that he had with his cousin, Glitterhoof, give birth to his son/grandson. Now I have one final story that's a bit simpler, and relative to the other 2, has a happy ending. This story takes us back to Ireland, though to a high king who actually rules the entire island this time. Flaherty took the throne at the age of 9 when his father died fighting in a war against the Scottish king. Now Flaherty was actually able to finish this war, and not only that, but after an assassination and 2 wars against his relatives, he was able to regain any land that had been lost in the succession. The issue here is that openly executing his cousins and siblings had led to everyone regarding him as a tyrant, and either hating him openly or being terrified of him. This led to lots of factions forming to aim for independence, which only led to more assassinations and executions. This was until one day, a stray pup appeared near Flaherty's castle. Now this pup sparked something in the Tyrant High King, and he decided to take it in, naming her Lassie. Now the king may still have been viewed as a tyrant, but after Lassie appeared, anytime he felt like throwing a vassal in the dungeon for an offhand comment, he instead pet Lassie or went for a walk. Lassie was actually a very bad dog, and over the years she got into lots of trouble, ruining courtiers' clothes on the rooms, or growling at anyone who even disagreed with the king. But the king always defended her. Of course, a dog can't live forever, and after many years, one day Lassie didn't run to the king the way she normally did, instead barely being able to raise her head to look at him. Flaherty stayed with her all that night, but there was nothing that he could do to help her. Filled with grief at the loss of his only companion, the king quickly returned to his tyrant ways, and fueled by this rage he looked outwards to his neighbours in Scotland, England and Wales, and settled that he would rule them all. Over the next 20 years the king was almost constantly fighting in wars, slowly taking more and more land, filling his dungeons with prisoners as he went, until he first usurped the crown of Wales, and then the crown of Scotland. He even started construction of a giant cathedral in the honour of Lassie. But as he was fighting in the Highland of Scotland, like his father 50 years before him, Flaherty died of old age. Unlike his father though, he died leading one of the largest armies in the world, as the holder of the Triple Crown of Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Lassie's legacy was far-reaching, even for a very bad dog. Okay, I could spend hours going through all the stories I've gotten out of playing CK3, but I think you get the basic idea now. Though I should note I've left out a lot of assassinations, affairs, plotting, and tactical disinheriting just to keep the video down in time. If you're wondering if you should get this game, you're not going to be shocked to hear that I heavily recommend it. Though if you're on the fence, I have two options for you. CK2 is free to play, though the game without any DLCs doesn't even let you play as Muslim or Norse rulers, and dozens of features that are core in CK3 are either not in the game or DLC, so it's a very bare bones experience. The other option is to grab Xbox Game Pass for PC for a month for €4, and that'll let you play CK3 itself so you can make up your mind, and it's got other games so you can write it off as not just a waste of money for this one game. I think now is probably the best time to play the game, because like I've said in some of my other videos, Paradox DLCs aren't without benefits, but they can definitely muddle how a game plays, and right now you have this excellent release in CK3 that really feels like it isn't missing anything, but also has room to grow into, which makes me very excited for its future. The only features that I miss from CK2 personally is the Trade Republic feature that was brought in by the Republic DLC, and maybe the earlier start dates. Though in general, I'm interested to see what Paradox do with this game going forward. It's very likely that I'll end up coming back to this game in the future, as no doubt excellent mods will be released for it, as well as numerous DLCs. But for now, I'm going to be moving away from Paradox for the next month, though my next video will feature some Vikings if that's your kind of thing. So if you made it to this part of the video, thanks so much for watching. I don't really know what I thought this video was going to be when I started making it, but I enjoyed Crusader Kings 3 far too much not to talk about it. And well, if I wasn't making a video about Crusader Kings 3, I wouldn't have had time to make anything else, because honestly this game's taken up so much of my time because I just love it so much. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. New video hopefully out now in the next 2 weeks or so, and I'll see you soon. Remember to like, comment, share with your friends, check out my other videos while you wait. And if you have any interesting Crusader Kings 2 stories, Crusader Kings 3 stories, or any other games that you'd like me to check out, just leave them in the comments and I'll get looking at them. I always love your suggestions. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.